Hello, and thank you for having me on again. Today I'm going to be talking about things to look out for in webinars. O&M asked me to sort of talk about this, given that physical meetings aren't really possible at this time. And so I put together some thoughts about things that investors can look out for during these types of communication and engagement. And really this builds out of the things that I typically look out for in corporate presentations, the corporate presentation deck, things of that to give an indication of possible red flags about a particular company, project, or investment opportunity, things I really do look out for. And I guess the first one to really draw attention to, webinars are a new way for people to communicate, and so I understand that companies as well as investors, the audience, are still sort of getting to grips with things, but at the end of the day it is still a professional communication. It is still a company looking to speak to investors, people that it hopes will invest money in their company. And so I think it's always useful for investors, and this is what I do. You always have to suspend human nature. Human nature typically expects people to be good, expects people to be truthful, takes people at their word. In a potential investment situation or evaluating a company or project, that's not necessarily a very healthy thing to have. And so, to protect yourself, always suspend that and question what you're being told, the information you're being given. Seek evidence and look for what supports that evidence. In the webinar scenario, again, I appreciate that this is new to a lot of executives as well, and so there may be nerves. They may be a little bit flustered to be on camera or speaking to someone they perhaps cannot see. But there are fundamental things that remain constant. Always like to see executives that have a good grasp of the issues, have precision when talking about things, whether that's technical factors, market factors, government factors, or social factors. I expect them to have a very, very good grasp of the facts and the situation surrounding their story. So the question there is, are they on top of everything? Can they answer questions in relevant depth and detail, or are they vague? Are they always saying, oh, I'll have to get back to you on that? To me, that if people that are vague, that starts to look a bit shaky. When you're looking at the slide deck, whether it's you've downloaded it from their web page or you're seeing slides in a webinar or what have you, always look for how well produced that deck is. The quality information is one thing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but basic things: are there spelling errors? Are there geographical errors? Has there been a lack of attention to detail? Other things that show that perhaps they've been sloppy, and the inference there is perhaps if they're sloppy in this, talking to an investor or someone they're looking to raise money from, what else are they going to be sloppying? And often it's the lack of care and control of details that can be the difference between success and failure of a particular company or project. So a lack of attention to detail for me is never a good thing. Beyond that, a gold company, a gold miner, is competing with 200 other gold miners on the TSX. Exploration companies are competing with many, many more, hundreds of companies. Beyond that, they're competing with every other company that's listed on the stock market. So how professional or homemade does their investor deck look? If you cannot communicate your story well and in an attractive way, in a way that engages people, a company, I think, is going to struggle. And if they're going to struggle, is that where you want to put your money? Regardless of how good the deposit is, if they can't tell their story well, they're not going to get the attention and probably the investment that they need to really deliver on that. So does the presentation instill confidence in you or in me, or does it create more questions than answers. Moving on to sort of my next slide of comments. What are other things to look for? I'm not a technical expert, so things about geology and processing, I have to a certain extent, take with a grain of salt, but you can ask other people, and there are other places you can check to have gauge how precise or reasonable or rational comments and things of the technical aspects sound. But you also want to look for, is there compelling evidence in the presentation that the company's had successful engagement with government and communities? I think to a large extent in this day and age, most technical aspects related to projects can be solved. There are solutions available. So more often than not, project success depends upon whether a company can get it permitted, and that means how well or not does it get on with government and communities. Again, assume nothing is going to be simple with governments or communities, even though companies always say they have great government relations and great community relations. Look for evidence of that. Related to that, what are the timelines for permitting and permitting processes? What are the timelines on the economic studies? You want a roadmap before you with several gateposts, which can be decision points, entry points into stock, exit points for stock. Specifically, there will be news hooks for a stock. So how complete is the picture that you're being given? What's the team's experience in that particular country with that particular type of deposit? Things of that nature. Conflicts and issues will come up with governments and communities. How are they looking to address those? Moving on to the next slide, timelines are very, very important. Most investors invest with an investment timeline. Do you want to return in 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years? That's very variable for exploration and development companies. And so you need to have a good idea of where you are on that timeline. The Lassonde curve is a very helpful sort of thumbnail guide of that. And the Lassonde curve basically shows the life cycle of a junior explorer through exploration, economic studies, permitting, etc., and into mining. And there are points on that curve where investor interest is high. There are points where investor interest is low. And so it helps indicate entry points and exit points. So whereabouts is a company on that life cycle? It's always good to see a company have a timeline in their presentation for the work that's to come and the various milestones ahead of them. Importantly, it gives you a means to interrogate the company in the future. You said you're going to complete this study by this date. What's happened? If it's late, why is it late? What's changed? So it gives you a means to see if the company is completing the work it says it's going to do, if it's having the success it says it's going to do, and you can make your decisions accordingly. That's particularly the case, I think, when it comes to sort of permitting. Permitting often takes longer than companies initially think, and it's also the case on mine construction, mine build. Mine constructions often take longer than companies initially put in. That could be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, and sometimes even longer. Moving on, one of the sort of final things I really look for in companies is transparency. For me, that means in a webinar or conversation, it means not avoiding questions, not ducking questions, trying to give an answer, being very honest when, look, I don't have that information, but I'll get it to you, ensuring that they actually do get that information to you. And when things do happen, for example, the COVID-19 outbreak, being very honest and open about what is actually happening. Look, we've had to shut this operation down because the government's mandated that, or look, some of our employees or contractors have contracted the virus. Here's what we're doing to mitigate that and to put things right. But equally, that applies in permitting processes, how they're going, how well they're going or not. And when incidents occur, whether that's the death of an employee through a mining accident, or the community's protesting, or whatever. I think companies that are very transparent and open and quick to share the information they have, that helps generate trust. And at the end of the day, because I'm not a technical expert, generating trust, I think, is a key factor. And that's pretty much the sort of the things I look for, whether it's in a corporate deck or in a webinar. The webinar gives one an opportunity to see the company executive and to sort of get a feel of the cut of their cloth. And that's, for me, is an important indicator to how well that company may possibly do. Thank you.